Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I was halfway up the marble steps of the Fairmont Grand in San Francisco when I heard his voice behind me, cold, precise, disappointed. "You're really speaking tonight? At this thing?" I didn't turn around right away. My hand tightened around the strap of my clutch. I knew that tone, the one that came right before the lecture. "My name's Lauren, I'm 31. I live in Oakland and work for a nonprofit that supports underserved youth. And tonight, I was one of the keynote speakers at a charity gala I didn't belong at." The crowd inside was all diamonds and cufflinks, wealth dripping off every wrist. I stood out, even in a rented designer gown. But I knew what I came here to do. My father, Alan Whitmore, was right behind me now, tall, silver hair, the kind of presence that filled a room before he even opened his mouth. CEO of a multi-state real estate empire, built his life on numbers, acquisitions, and public image. Nothing about my world made sense to him. He adjusted his cufflink like he was about to go into a board meeting. "You're wasting your time, Lauren. You could have been running a division by now. Instead, you're playing social worker." Quick note, before we get into it, share which city or country you're watching from. I didn't answer. I just turned, gave him a tight smile, and nodded. He shook his head like I was some failed investment. "You want applause from people who'll forget your name by morning. That's not legacy. That's noise." I glanced at the people pouring into the ballroom behind us. I knew some of them. Wealthy donors, public figures, big players in philanthropy and politics. But I wasn't there to impress them. I had programs to fund, kids waiting on summer mentorship slots, and city partnerships that could change entire neighborhoods. Still, I felt the sting of his words. It hit the same way it always did, deep, fast, and sharp. He had a way of cutting straight to the bone with barely any effort. He looked past me like he was already bored. "I came to shake a few hands, not to watch you play savior." My jaw clenched. I took a breath, smoothed my dress, and stepped toward the entrance. I didn't need him to get it, not tonight. Maybe not ever. The ballroom doors opened, and the noise rushed out. Laughter, clinking glasses, announcements over soft jazz. The spotlight would be on me in less than an hour. I walked in anyway, shoulders back, head high. His words still echoing in my ears, but my feet didn't stop moving. The hum of the ballroom faded behind me as I kept walking, but his voice stayed stuck in my head. It always did. That voice had been shaping my life since before I could spell my name. I grew up in Hillsborough, California, one of those zip codes where every lawn looked like a magazine cover and every dinner party felt like a photo op. Private tennis lessons, designer backpacks in third grade, and birthday parties where the guest list was more about networking than friends. My dad built Whitmore Holdings from the ground up. That's what everyone said. Truth is, his dad gave him the first building. But sure, he built it. Worked 7 days a week. Phone always in hand, mind always 5 deals ahead. He didn't come to school plays or science fairs. He sent gifts instead, usually expensive ones with tags still on. His love language was success. If you weren't closing a deal or increasing your value, you weren't doing anything worth talking about. And me, I wasn't born to be a princess. I wasn't delicate or polished or quiet. I asked too many questions, got too passionate about the wrong things. At 12, I tried organizing a book drive for a low-income school in East Palo Alto. My dad didn't say a word about it. Not even a good job. But when I got straight A's that semester, he handed me a check and told me I finally figured out how the system works. My mom was different. Sarah Whitmore had a softness about her that never matched the house she lived in. She wore pearls but baked banana bread from scratch. When Dad flew off for meetings in New York or Hong Kong, she stayed up watching movies with me in sweats, letting me talk about whatever random idea I had that week. She didn't try to change me. She just listened. And when my dad's silence felt like a punishment, she'd leave notes in my lunchbox that said things like, "You already matter." Still, I always wanted his approval, always chased it like a dog after a car. I told myself that one day I'd earn it. But at 18, I blew it all up. I had just graduated from a prep school that cost more than most people's college tuition. My dad had already lined up an internship for me at his company, corner office, corporate credit card, fast track to everything he wanted. Instead, I applied to volunteer at a local nonprofit downtown, an after-school center that worked with at-risk teens. I didn't even tell him until the day before I was supposed to start. He was sitting at the kitchen island, sipping his espresso, flipping through the Wall Street Journal like always. I stood across from him, heart pounding. "I'm not taking the internship," I said. He didn't look up. "Excuse me?" I'm volunteering at Riverstone Youth Center. It's a shelter? His eyes snapped to mine. You think giving away your time is more valuable than learning how the real world works? It's not just about money, Dad. Number, it's about wasting potential. He folded the paper and stood. You want to play charity? Fine. But don't expect applause from me. He walked out before I could say another word. He didn't talk to me for 3 weeks. No texts, no calls, no questions about where I was or what I was doing. He acted like I'd vanished. Mom tried to smooth it over, but even she couldn't get through to him when he was in that mode. When he finally did speak to me again, it was cold and clipped. You're soft, he said. You don't have what it takes to survive in the real world. That place will chew you up. I just stood there and took it, swallowed the lump in my throat and told myself I didn't need him to understand. But that day marked the line in the sand. From then on, I knew whatever future I built, I'd be building it without him. He said the nonprofit world would chew me up. I guess I wanted to prove him right at first, just so I could prove I survived it anyway. By 22, I was already knee-deep in the work. I'd been volunteering every week through college, balancing papers and fundraising events, networking at grimy community centers, while my classmates chased investment banking internships. I didn't tell my dad when I applied for the nonprofit leadership program in Seattle. I knew what he'd say. Hell, I could practically hear it in my head. You're wasting your 20s on pipe dreams. The program was competitive, small cohort, hands-on mentorship. I got in on my second try. I packed up, moved north, and shared a 2-bedroom with 3 other women who cared about the same things I did: housing justice, youth safety, food security. We lived off coffee and donated meals. Most days I felt exhausted. All of us did. But for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. When I graduated a year later, I landed a job at Horizon Impact, one of the most respected youth development charities on the West Coast. They gave me a real title, a real salary. Small, but mine. I called my mom first. She cried. I didn't bother telling my dad. Of course, he found out. He always did. Not from me, from someone at the club probably, or one of his business contacts who had a donor tie-in. He never acknowledged it. Didn't call, didn't ask. But his monthly transfers into my account never stopped. The same way he used to leave money on the counter when I was a teenager, silent, detached, like that was supposed to mean something. It was around that time I started resenting the money more than the silence. At one family dinner in Palo Alto, he made his move. Same white tablecloths, same imported wine, same waiters who knew us by name. I'd just walked in when he nodded to the chair beside him. You're still working at that youth organization? I didn't answer right away, just unfolded my napkin and set it in my lap. He continued, cutting into his steak. At what point are you going to get serious about your future? I looked at him. What do you mean, serious? He didn't even look up. You're too smart to waste your time running bake sales for teenagers. You could be managing a portfolio by now. It's not a bake sale. Then what is it? He said, finally meeting my eyes. Because I don't see growth. I don't see impact. I see a smart girl playing small. I felt my jaw tighten, but I didn't say a word. I wanted to. God, I wanted to unload everything I'd been carrying for years. The late nights, the budget fights, the grant proposals, the kids whose lives were literally hanging in the balance. But I didn't. He wasn't asking because he cared. He was asking so he could dismiss it. My mom reached for my hand under the table, gently squeezed. She knew that look in my eyes, the one I always got before I blew up. But I didn't blow up. I swallowed it, all of it. I chewed my salad, nodded through his lecture about building legacy, and made a silent vow right there, between bites of overpriced greens and passive-aggressive digs. I would prove him wrong, not by joining his company, not by chasing his approval, but by building something that mattered, something he couldn't ignore forever. That vow stuck with me. It drove everything I did after that dinner. I worked like hell, nights, weekends, holidays, whatever it took. I climbed fast at Horizon, led pilot programs, rebuilt broken partnerships, doubled our grant funding in under a year. People noticed, not just in the office, but city officials, donors, even national organizations started paying attention. By 29, I was named Director of Strategic Programs. My name started showing up in conference lineups and white papers. People started quoting me in rooms I used to feel invisible in. Then came the invitation that changed everything. One of the largest nonprofit summits in the country, the Impact Forum, wanted me as their keynote speaker. San Francisco, over 1,000 people. CEOs, mayors, billionaires with checkbooks that could move mountains. They wanted me to open the night. My first thought? Good. Let him hear it. My second? He won't come. Still, I sent him the invitation anyway. Handwritten envelope delivered through his assistant. No note, just the invite. Just a quiet chance. He never replied. The day of the speech, I arrived 2 hours early. Not because I had to, but because I couldn't sit still. My palms were sweating. I'd done speeches before, but nothing like this. I had one shot to show them I belonged. Backstage was chaos, clipboards, makeup touch-ups, people rushing around with headsets. I stood in front of a full-length mirror in a navy blue jumpsuit that cost me 2 paychecks. I adjusted my collar, checked my teeth, told myself not to care. But part of me still looked for him, just for a second, in every tall man in a tailored suit who walked past the green room. When they called my name, the room went quiet. The lights hit my face, and I stepped onto the stage. And for the first time in years, I didn't think about my dad. Not really. I talked about the kids we worked with, the neighborhoods people forgot, the nights we ran out of food, the moments we made it work anyway. I talked about dignity and hope and why impact doesn't always show up on a balance sheet. And when I finished, there was a pause. Then the whole room stood up. The applause hit like a wave, real, loud, overwhelming. People clapping, some cheering. I even saw a few people wipe their eyes. I smiled, nodded, stepped back from the mic, and let it sink in. This wasn't noise. This was proof. I walked off stage shaking. Not from nerves, but adrenaline. Validation. Back in the green room, my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "You were incredible. I recorded the whole thing." He didn't come, but I did. I blinked hard and looked away from the mirror. I wanted to be angry at him, but I wasn't. Not in that moment. I was something else entirely. I was done waiting. He could keep ignoring me, keep pretending my world didn't matter. I didn't need his permission anymore. 2 weeks after the gala, I saw him again. It was my cousin's engagement party in Menlo Park, one of those over-the-top backyard events with a private chef, live jazz, and floral centerpieces that probably cost more than my rent. I almost didn't go. But my mom asked me to, and I didn't want to give her another excuse to play peacekeeper. He showed up late, as always, shaking hands, grinning like a senator, dressed in a charcoal gray suit like it was a campaign stop. I caught him watching me from across the yard as I talked with one of my cousins. I braced for it. Sure enough, as soon as there was a lull, he walked over. "Big speech," he said flatly, like he was complimenting a weather report. I nodded. It was. He took a sip of whatever scotch they were serving and narrowed his eyes. "You looked proud of yourself up there." I kept my voice calm. "I was." "Funny," he said. "You always talk about humility, service, making a difference. But then you stand on a stage like you're running for office." I blinked. "What's your point?" "My point," he said, "is that you say you don't care about recognition, but you sure go looking for it." There it was, that slow, measured gut punch he specialized in. No yelling, no name-calling. Just a few words that made everything feel smaller. "I wasn't looking for recognition," I said. "I was sharing what we've accomplished. That program helped—" He cut me off. "You could have built something real by now, Lauren. Something scalable, profitable. Instead, you've turned charity into a hobby with a podium." I stared at him, heart pounding. "You think what I do is a hobby?" "You're smart," he said, waving his glass like it didn't matter. "But you're burning your talent on crumbs. You should have been running your own firm by now, not chasing applause from bleeding hearts." I felt my breath hitch, just for a second. The part of me that still wanted his approval flinched hard. I swallowed. "It's not about applause. It's about doing work that matters." "Work that matters doesn't keep the lights on," he said. "It doesn't scale. It doesn't leave anything behind but memories." I could feel the heat rising in my neck. My fingers curled into fists at my sides. Every part of me wanted to fight him right there on that manicured lawn, to rip apart every smug, narrow thing he believed. But I didn't. I stepped back, looked him dead in the eye, and I walked away. Didn't say another word. Didn't try to defend it. Because I finally understood. He didn't want to understand me. He never had. And I wasn't going to waste one more breath trying to make him. I didn't look back. I walked off that lawn, got in my car, and told myself I was done letting him get under my skin. But I wasn't, not completely. Back at Horizon, we were in the middle of launching our most ambitious project yet, a citywide mentorship pipeline connecting underserved high schoolers with career professionals across the Bay Area. We'd spent 2 years planning it, writing grants, forming partnerships. It was personal for me. It was everything I wished I had at that age, and we were finally rolling it out. Then the funding got slashed. A major corporate sponsor pulled out without warning, citing strategic redirection. Translation, they didn't think we were shiny enough for their brand anymore. Overnight, we lost nearly 30% of the budget. Programs stalled. Staff got nervous. Emails started piling up with subject lines like, concerned about rollout timeline and should we delay launch? I didn't have the luxury of delay. The first thing I did was call a meeting with the team. Half of them looked exhausted. The other half looked scared. We're still doing this, I said, standing at the whiteboard. It's just going to be harder. How much harder? One of the program leads asked. I was honest. A lot. I broke the news piece by piece, what we'd lost, what we had left, and where we could pivot. Then I told them what we were going to do about it. Extra fundraisers, emergency outreach to smaller donors, social media blitzes, grant amendments, community sponsorships. Every last card we had left to play, we were playing it. I spent the next 6 weeks working 18-hour days, writing appeals, cold calling past donors, hosting weekend panels just to raise awareness. I knocked on doors I'd avoided for years, including some of my dad's old contacts. I didn't use his name, just mine. Some said yes, most didn't. One night, around midnight, I was still in the office eating almonds from a drawer when my phone buzzed. It was a news alert. Another tech company had just donated 6 figures to a youth robotics program in the Mission District, a program that looked a hell of a lot like ours. I stared at the screen for a long minute, then shut it off. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to call him and ask if he ever thought about what his daughter was doing while he was investing in places like that, places that already had a spotlight. But I didn't call. I didn't scream. I just kept going. Week by week, dollar by dollar, we patched the project together. We downsized some events, combined a few programs, got creative with staffing, and somehow we stayed afloat. The pressure never let up, though. Some days, I'd stare at the budget sheets so long they started to blur. Other days, I'd come home and sit in silence, too tired to even eat. But I never once doubted the work. I believed in it. In every kid who showed up with a broken resume and walked out with a real job interview. In every mentor who stuck around longer than they had to. In every email that said, "This changed my life." Still, in the back of my mind, his voice hovered like background static. You're burning your talent on crumbs. You could have built something real. I shook it off every time, or at least tried to, because I wasn't building it for him, and I sure as hell wasn't quitting. The first time I let myself breathe was when the last mentor logged out of the closing Zoom call. We did it. After months of scrambling, late nights, and pushing my team to the edge, the pilot launched. Not just launched, worked. Mentors were matched, kids showed up, and the outcomes were better than we even projected. School counselors were calling us. Parents were emailing. Local press ran a feature. No one said miracle, but it felt like one. I stood in the middle of our office that Friday night while everyone else headed out for drinks, half of them cheering, the other half too tired to speak. I just stood there, staring at the whiteboard we hadn't erased in 6 weeks, wondering how the hell we pulled it off. People were proud of me. That much was clear. Angela, our program coordinator, hugged me at the door and said, "You saved this place." A few days later, my executive director handed me a glass plaque. It was etched with Innovative Leadership Award, Lauren Whitmore. I thanked her, smiled for the photos, clapped for the others, and yet, it didn't land the way I thought it would. That empty space inside me, still there, still echoing. I went home that night, kicked off my heels, and let myself collapse on the couch with a bag of pretzels and a warm beer I didn't even remember buying. Outside, the city lights blinked like they always did. Inside, I sat in the quiet. I didn't need his approval. I didn't. But a small part of me, when I couldn't seem to shut up, still wanted to hear something. I was halfway through the beer when I heard the envelope hit the floor behind the front door. No return address. But the handwriting? Sharp, perfect, familiar. I didn't have to flip it over to know who it was from. I stared at it for a minute before picking it up. It was a single sheet of paper. No, dear Lauren. No, love, Dad. Just this. Saw the article in the Chronicle. Impressed by your dedication. A lot of people would have given up. You didn't. AW. I read it once, then again. The third time, I laughed out loud. It wasn't warm. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a full sentence of praise. Just a few flat words on nice paper, but it was something. The first acknowledgement in years. I leaned back into the couch and let it sit there on the coffee table, that cold little letter, like a visitor I didn't ask for but wasn't ready to kick out. Part of me wanted to rip it up, another part wanted to frame it. I did neither. I just left it there, in plain sight. I thought about all the nights I'd spent wondering what it would take for him to notice. All the ways I'd tried to do it right. The right tone, the right balance of passion and professionalism, the right numbers, the right public-facing version of impact he might finally respect. And now here it was, a flat, hollow sentence dressed up as progress. But for once, I didn't spiral. He'd seen it. He knew. And whether he understood it or not, he couldn't ignore it anymore. I stared at the letter one last time, then stood up, turned off the light, and went to bed. For the first time in a long time, I slept like someone who didn't need anything from anyone. The letters stayed on my coffee table for a full week. I never replied. I didn't need to. 1 year later, I got the kind of email that made my fingers go numb. An invite to join a national panel on leadership and social impact. New York City. 5 speakers, broadcast online. Corporate executives, nonprofit heads, political consultants, and me. I sat with it for a few minutes before forwarding it to my mom. Then I printed another copy and wrote his name on the envelope. No note, just the invite, again. I dropped it in the mailbox the next morning and didn't think about it after that. Not seriously. I knew better than to expect anything. The day of the event, I flew in early. My name was on the program, front and center. I met the other panelists in the green room, a startup founder who launched a water tech company, a senator's advisor, the CEO of a national youth network. All of them shaking hands, swapping bios, dropping buzzwords. I listened, smiled, waited. They weren't my competition. They weren't even my audience. The ballroom was bigger than the one in San Francisco. Tiered rows, giant screens, at least 600 people in the crowd, plus who knew how many watching the live stream. They introduced me last. I stepped on stage to applause that grew louder the longer I walked. It hit me all at once. How far I'd come. How many rooms I'd fought to belong in. Then I saw him, standing in the back, against the wall. Navy suit, light blue tie, arms folded, face blank. Alan Whitmore, in a room full of changemakers, he used to pretend didn't matter. He didn't move, didn't smile, but he was there. I didn't let my voice shake when I started. I locked into my rhythm, the same one I'd practiced a dozen times. I talked about trust, community-led growth, what it meant to hand the mic to people who'd never had one. I told a story about one of our students, how he used a mentor connection to land his first job interview, how he now ran his own tutoring program for middle schoolers. The room stayed dead quiet, not bored, locked in. And when I finished, they stood, all of them. I blinked under the lights, took a breath, nodded once, and walked off stage like it was just another day. I didn't look for him again. I didn't need to. The panel wrapped an hour later. People kept coming up to me, business cards, thank yous, invitations to speak again. And then I turned around, and he was there. Up close, he looked exactly the same. Perfect suit, steady eyes, jaw locked just enough to hide what he was feeling. He held out his hand. I stared at it for a second, then took it. It wasn't warm, it wasn't soft, but it was real. No hug, no words. He didn't say, "I'm proud of you." He didn't have to. I already knew. A couple months after the panel, another letter showed up. Same sharp handwriting, same heavy envelope. But this one felt different before I even opened it. It was only 3 sentences. I've been wrong about a lot of things. I didn't understand what you were building, but I do now. I'm proud of you, even if I never said it before. That was it. No signature, no qualifiers, no sideways comments. I sat at my kitchen table with it for a long time, not crying, not angry, just still. It didn't erase anything. It didn't suddenly turn him into someone he wasn't, but it was real, honest. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to earn it. We met for coffee the next week. His idea. He picked a quiet spot near downtown, one of those upscale cafes he probably had a stake in. He was already there when I walked in, reading the paper, tie loose for once. He stood up when he saw me, no handshake this time, no awkward formality, just a small nod as I sat down across from him. "Thanks for coming," he said. I stirred my coffee. "You're not used to saying that, huh?" His mouth twitched like he almost smiled. "Number, I'm not." There was a long pause, not tense, just unfamiliar. He didn't apologize, not directly, but he asked questions, real ones, about the kids, the programs, the expansion I was working on next year, and he listened. Not with that passive, polite stare he used to give me at dinners, but actually listened. When I finished explaining how we were scaling into Sacramento, he leaned back and nodded slowly. You built something, he said, from scratch, with nothing but belief. I looked at him. That's how you started too. You just used different tools. He didn't argue. We sat like that for a few minutes, not talking, just drinking coffee like two people who finally saw each other clearly. No grand moment, no emotional breakthrough. But it was enough. He saw me. Not as a disappointment, not as a project gone sideways, as a builder. And for the first time, I wasn't chasing his respect. I had it. The life I'd chosen was mine, fully mine. I'd fought for it. I'd earned it. And sitting across from him in that polished little cafe, I finally knew. I didn't just prove him wrong. I proved myself right.